Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Monday, May the 20th, 2024. This evening, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Deputy Village Clerk Sylvia Luke.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sucker.
Here.
Trustee Robinson.
Here.
Trustee Kuhn.
Here.
Trustee Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan will be absent. Trustee Klein.
Here.
Mayor Van Duzen.
Here, we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody wants? Yes.
I want to remove 8B, the Plan Commission resignation. And as soon as we approve the consent agenda, I'd like to motion that we reorder items 12A and 12B, which both concern ranked choice voting. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson.
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen.
Aye, the motion passes. This evening, we have a proclamation honoring emergency medical services. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, and whereas members of emergency medical service teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services demonstrate the teamwork of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, dispatchers, educators, and others. And whereas the members of emergency medical service teams, whether career or voluntary, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical services providers, and particularly our Skokie Fire Department first responders who provided professional, empathetic care for more than 8,000 patients this past year. And whereas the United States of America is celebrating the 50th anniversary of EMS Week, whereas this year's theme, Honoring Our Past, Forging the Future, recognizes the tremendous contributions of EMS providers for half a century, while continuing to strive to provide improved services and patient outcomes. Now, therefore, I, George Van Duzen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th to the 25th, 2024 as Emergency Medical Services Week, and encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. And I'd like to present this to our Fire Chief, Jeff Hoflick.
I'll be brief. It's truly an honor to represent the members of the Skokie Fire Department. Our firefighters and paramedics, EMTs, work tirelessly, and I could not be more proud of the service that they provide to the community, the professional skill and the empathetic care that they demonstrate on a daily basis. Truly makes me proud. I'm humbled to have this honor, Mayor, and I appreciate the proclamation, and I thank all of you for your service.
And I think anyone who has ever seen our EMS in action will concur that I don't think anybody does it better, and they do it day in and day out. And so we want to thank our EMS for everything that they do. Thank you. And this evening, we have an award presentation. Jimmy Gonzalez, a commissioner of the Skokie Telecommunications and Technology Commission, will make a presentation. Jimmy?
This is more of a speech than a presentation. I don't have a slide or anything. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm always too tall for the microphone, but is this a good volume? Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So hi, my name is Jimmy Gonzalez-Vicker. I'm on the Science and Telecommunications Commission for the Village, and I've been on it for about 6 years. This year, the Telecommunications and Technology Commission is very excited to present our annual award to 2 dedicated Skokie students who exemplify scientific excellence with an original project that can improve the quality of life in the village of Skokie. On March 3rd, some of my fellow commissioners and I attended the Regional Science Fair that's hosted by the Illinois Junior Academy of Science. It's usually held at Niles North High School. This year it was held at Stevenson, which is a lot further up the road, but we all somehow made it. After reviewing several projects, some of my commissioners and I decided that Safa Hussein and Nusayba Rahmani as the scientists who would receive the project. I'll have you come up in just a minute. You don't want to make it awkward for you. Safa and Nusayba are Muslim Community Center Academy students, and they are the 5th and 6th students to ever receive the Skokie Telecommunications and Technology Award. Safa and Nusayba's project is titled, Can Generative AI Meet the Standard Grading Level of a Literature Teacher? For their project, which focuses on the use of artificial intelligence, they wanted to know if ChatGPT would be able to grade literature assignments as effectively and efficiently as their teacher. Additionally, their study researched how the use of artificial intelligence may be able to alleviate some of the stresses of grading from their teacher as well. Their project impressively demonstrates the growth we are seeing as a society when it comes to the use of emerging technologies and artificial intelligence within the education system. The Stat Commission and the Board of Trustees are honored to award Safa Hussein and Nusayba Rahmani with the 2024 award. You can come up and Mayor Van Duzen will present it to you. Oh, and there's a bunch of pictures we're taking too, so why not? There's the awards for them. It's all yours.
Congratulations.
Now we're going to do a quick photo for
You got it on that side.
you. Okay. I have a few more things, but you can say whatever you'd like.
No. Are they going to talk a little bit about that?
No, I don't. I mean, if you want to, you can, but I'm not going to put you on the spot if you don't want to be put on the spot. But if you'd like to stay here for just a minute, I'm going to close it up, and then you're free to go. Let's see. So thank you, Safa and Nusayba, for your hard work and dedication to making your community a healthier and better place to live. On behalf of the committee, we really wish you the best in your very bright futures. There's a few things I'd also like to mention. This is, I think, the 5th or 6th year we've given out this award. These are the first 8th graders to ever receive the award. Again, they were competing against high schoolers and from all over the region. They're the first students from the MCC Academy to win it, and then they're the first duo to win it together. So it's just a lot of really good milestones that super impressive, everybody. And before I go, I'm just going to do a quick shout out to my commission. So Scott Schamberg is the chair, Sam Corsione is the vice chair, Vince Giovanni, Jimmy Gonzalez-Vicker, that's me, Ken Grossman, Syed Mahmood, Avi Nutkis, Christopher O, Richard Owen. Also a shout out to our liaisons, Mayor Van Duzen and Alex Franz, who's a management analyst for the village. And also shout out to my mom. She is Sharon Vicker, and she's also on the Fine Arts Committee. So thank you for supporting art and science. Congratulations.
I was a little nervous in asking them if they would like to describe their project because I know I wouldn't understand what it is they've done. But congratulations, 8th graders. That's very impressive. Next, speaking of EMS and our gratitude to our fire department, Nicole Podest, a commissioner of the Board of Fire and Police Commission, will do the honors swearing in a couple new firefighters.
Thank you, Mayor. It's really fitting that there was the proclamation for our emergency medical people, and tonight I get the honor of swearing in 2 new firefighters to the village of Skokie. So I'd like to thank everyone for being here on this very special evening. This is the best part, I think, for all the commissioners, is when we get to swear in new firefighters and new police officers. I'd like to acknowledge family and friends who are here tonight supporting them, as well as future colleagues. This is a really proud moment for all of you, and I'd like to extend my congratulations and welcome you to our village. Tonight, like I said, we'll swear in 2 newly appointed firefighters, and we must never forget that these men and women are the ones who serve as our first responders. They deserve our admiration and our respect. They're often the first ones at a scene of tragedy and provide security and comfort to those in need. We invest in our first responders with authority to promote and keep the peace, and you've earned our respect, support, and gratitude, and it is my very special honor to be here during this very special ceremony. So without further ado, could I have Michael Hernandez please come up? Actually, here, that's okay. So you'll just repeat after me and raise your right hand. Okay? Okay. So I, Michael Hernandez,
I, Michael Hernandez,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
the state of Illinois,
the state of Illinois,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
and the rules and regulations of the fire department,
and the rules and regulations of the fire department,
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of a firefighter to the best of my ability.
of a firefighter to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Right here. Thank you. Very good. And then this is for you. So very good. Welcome to Skokie.
Thank you.
Okay, and Firefighter Hernandez, would you introduce your family and friends who are here this evening?
Yes, so I have my mother and father sitting right here, my sister Crystal as well, and then my grandparents are here as well.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. And now could I please ask Glenn Reno to please step up?
I, Glenn Reno,
Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
the state of Illinois,
the state of Illinois,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
and the rules and regulations of the fire department,
and the rules and regulations of the fire department,
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of a firefighter to the best of my ability.
of a firefighter to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Okay, and Firefighter Reno, would you introduce your family and friends?
I am here with my parents, Barbara and Glenn Reno.
Congratulations. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our fire department. It truly is one of the finest in the United States. And I say that without any fear of contradiction, because all of the national organizations that do accreditation have said the same thing. But I think what's most important is what the people of the village of Skokie say about our fire and our police department. The first responders are the ones we really appreciate the hard work that you do. As the commissioner noted, you're often the first ones to arrive on a tragic scene. You head toward trouble while the rest of us are running away from trouble. We salute you. And every 3 years, we have a survey conducted. It's impartial. It's not done by us. And every time we've done this, and it's been done for about the past 15 or 20 years now, our police and our fire departments all rank among the citizens of the village in the 90th percentile. There are not many municipalities that can say that. And we're proud. We have great leadership. And congratulations, you're joining a great force. And let's take a short break so we can congratulate our young awardees this evening and say hello and congratulations to our new firefighters. So let's just take a short 5-minute break.
social one.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Okay, the meeting will be back in order. Next item on the agenda is 8B. Trustee Johnson.
Oh, thank you. So I have no objections to this Plan Commission resignation. I do have just a few comments, and I have a request. This is I think the fourth time in the past year and a half or so that a member of the Plan Commission has been resigned or reappointed because they failed to meet our membership requirements for commissioners. And for 3 of these cases, it was due to the attendance requirements outlined in Section 2447 of our code. So it's become evident that this section of Village Code is not being enforced in a kind of a consistent way across the village's system of boards and commissions. And so I'd like to request a review of the mayor's office. Mayor, I'm hoping that this is not too much to ask, but I'm asking that within a month, you submit to the trustees a comprehensive list of our village commissioners indicating which are not in compliance with Section 2447 of Village Code, and indicating which of these commissioners will be resigned or which will be reappointed according to the provisions that are outlined for the mayor in that section of Village Code, just so we can kind of move forward in a more consistent way.
Let me point out that Peter resigned for personal and professional reasons. It had nothing to do with his attendance. And it was something that I had not asked for, but he did. It has to do with a personal problem. And he served the commission well. And I think one of what you have to bear in mind is that these are people who are volunteering their time. And sometimes it's difficult. Life catches up with us in many instances. But I will try and take a look at it and see what I can do to let everybody know.
I appreciate it. I have no concerns with Commissioner Ousley, and I totally understand that all sorts of life events come up. I just want to make sure that moving forward, since this has been an issue in the past, that we're just enforcing this one section of Village Code in a consistent way.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is report of the village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and village trustees, and good evening, everyone. Item A is regarding a commercial corridor storefront enhancement program approval for Slice Restaurant located at 4849 Oakton Street in the amount of $35,220. Slice Restaurant has applied for funding under the village's commercial corridor storefront enhancement program for the newest location at that 4849 Oakton Street. Owner Daut Abisi's mission is to bring New York-style food to Skokie. This will be their second location. The food served will be halal and include pizza, chopped cheese, and loaded fries, gyros and chicken over rice. The applicant will be investing over $100,000 into the build-out and has received 2 bids for the interior work, which will include new equipment, venting components such as griddles and fryers, pizza, sandwich and dessert preparation tables, tables for hot storage, a walk-in cooler and freezer, electrical and ventilation upgrades. Goldstone Construction has been chosen to do the work and will include the design, materials, and construction. Therefore, the total village grant recommended is a maximum of the $35,220. Mayor and board approval for this grant, not to exceed that amount, is respectfully requested for Slice Restaurant located at 4849 Oakton Street.
A motion to concur with the manager's recommendation on a storefront enhancement grant of $35,220 not to exceed would be in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Robinson. Are there any comments or questions? Not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes.
And I should mention that BC's is in the audience, and so we wish you the best of luck, and thank you for choosing Skokie. Item B is regarding the updated proposed conditions and concepts for regulating short-term rentals, commonly referred to as STRs. Staff recommends approval to codify regulations with operating the short-term rentals in the village as presented in the memorandum, which is part of tonight's packet. The packet is always posted online on the village's website the Thursday before the Monday meetings. The recommendations for regulation include establishing definitions within the village code, specifying eligibility and requirements to operate a short-term rental, proposed operating conditions, and a fee structure for this use. Following the March 4th, 2024 Village Board meeting, staff incorporated the comments and feedback from that discussion and also reviewed additional research. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and Board authorize the Corporation Council to draft the necessary ordinance.
A motion on the short-term rental recommendations is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Comments, questions? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment? Trustee Johnson.
Oh, I just want to, I really appreciate this revised memo. I think this is a big improvement over what we saw in March, even though that, I think, laid a really good foundation for this ordinance. I want to acknowledge a lot of what Trustee Klein talked about at our March meeting, that there really are a few short-term rentals in Skokie that have been genuinely disruptive to neighbors, and this is a big problem. But I also want to acknowledge that the vast majority of short-term rentals really seem to be very respectful of neighbors and are really providing a really valuable service by providing short-term accommodations to folks that are visiting the community. There are two recommendations in here that I want to ask the board to consider revising, even though overall I think the structure is really sound. I'll start with the one I have the most concerns about. I still have a concern about the requirement that no more than one short-term rental property may be on the same block or block face as another STR, short-term rental. I think the intent of this suggestion is really good. The intent is to not kind of allow clusters of these. But I really don't think that this is a particularly equitable requirement, because I think we've seen short-term rentals, they vary very widely in scope. Some are single bedrooms that are rented out only a few times a year. Some are these huge 5 or 6 bedroom homes that are run by investors and are rented out throughout the whole year. Plus, our Skokie blocks, they vary very widely in housing density. We have blocks that might only have 15 or 20 homes. We have blocks in multifamily neighborhoods that have over 100 homes. So if we say only one short-term rental per block, I think this could play out in really inequitable ways. You could have a small block with one huge investor-run short-term rental operating throughout the year, and no one else on the block would be able to operate one. But you could also have a really dense block with one small hosted short-term rental operating only a few times a year, and no one else on the block would be able to have one. So I want to propose that we either get rid of this requirement or that we find maybe a more equitable way to reach the goal.
What is the motion?
Would you like me to, Trustee Secker, you had a comment?
I just wanted to hear about the rationale behind
Sure.
before we move forward.
So Johanna Knighton, the Director of Community Development, is approaching the podium. And
No. Let Johanna.
And while she's approaching, it does relate to the cumulative
Give her a
impact.
chance.
It does relate to the cumulative impact of one short-term rental has a certain impact, and then if you have a second or more than that, then it's the cumulative impact. And so as the regulations were being brainstormed and discussed with the board, there was a lot of different regulations that were originally proposed. And the one per block or block face was determined to be the recommended solution that took into account the variety of blocks, but the real intent is to be able to limit the cumulative effect. And so the one per block is a simple rule of thumb that people can remember. The regulation is clear, and it addresses the ability of potential cumulative effect. But Johanna has been the primary staff person working this through, and so I'd like for Johanna to respond.
So we drew a couple different sort of diagrams of what different densities might look like in terms of how would that scenario play out? What's the maximum in a distribution? And a couple things come down to it. One, in a primarily single family neighborhood, you might not have a parking issue. You get into a multifamily neighborhood, you might have a parking issue where you have lack of parking, you have resources maybe taxed in a different way. And the land and that kind of use gets into a little bit more of the scope creep of land use planning, how the intensification of a corridor, maybe in a more multi-use neighborhood, could feel more like a bed and breakfast style row in a vacation area. The underlying suggestion here also, and rationale for a lot of this, is you're creating new regulations for something you're not currently regulating, starting at one in this manner. One of the differences between what was discussed in March 4th and now was no more than 2 STR properties, maybe on the same block or block face as other short-term rentals. And then we had this piece that we've struck, properties must be more than 1,000 feet from one another. And so we felt in discussing and reviewing with others, that gets kind of tricky of as the crow flies, as the person can walk. Let's make this simple, let's do one, and then see how that goes, see how well we can regulate, we can monitor how that pans out in our community, because not all land uses have the same pattern. And so how does this live in a single family district? How does this live in a multifamily district? It's harder to take away a unit if you did 5 units or 2 units. Peeling that back is harder than adding at a later date if it seems like there's not a negative cumulative effect.
Trustee Robinson.
Are there any concerns currently where we have that reality in Skokie where you have
there are multiple Airbnbs nearby.
on a block specifically? I want to use that language.
I'm not aware of again, because many of them are not known to us because they're not operating under any kind of regulations. The best we can do, there's some that are within a reasonable distance that two entities might rent at the same time if you're trying to find homes that are near each other, but it's not necessarily resulting in it. It's usually one home might be causing the problem and the negative impact to the neighborhood.
You use the term reasonable distance.
I would go back to my 1,000 feet suggestion from the March 4th memo.
Right.
But those are a distance, quarter mile is generally seen in the urban planning land as a distance that somebody would walk. People aren't generally going to consider anything more than a quarter mile walkable to the average person in this country.
Trustee Kuhn.
I'm going back and just thinking about where the existing short-term rentals may be today. And let's suppose that there are some that are on the same block or within the same vicinity. How would you suggest that we would handle the registration in a way that's fair?
Yeah, so I think I don't have a great answer because I don't know that there are ones that would disqualify from looking at the map. It did not look as though there may be a few, but it's always challenging because if I look right now and I pick a weekend on the app, I can see stuff, but it may not reflect that 2 units are across the street from each other because that, when I picked for my window of time to see, doesn't show me every available Airbnb that ever exists in Skokie because it's just not how the app works. Because you could decide you would like your home to be an Airbnb pretty quickly and put it on for a 2-week period where you're going to be gone, and then that's never to be an Airbnb again. So these can evolve pretty quickly. So the goal of this whole regulation is to try to get the people who are the long-term Airbnb operators. I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 that will pop up here and there, and maybe we'll identify them and we can address it as it comes, but I don't know that this is going to be a problem that we're going to have when we launch this ordinance.
Trustee Klein?
I understand your point, but let me just give you some numbers that I look at it right now out of the box. We have 144 miles of road, 8 blocks to a mile. So we're okaying tonight 1,150 Airbnbs. I mean, to me, that seems like ample going into a new ordinance and a new idea. So 1,100 is a reasonable number, to me.
Trustee Robinson?
I would be super interested, if we can somehow get, and I know you're looking at the apps periodically, and I know things come up here and there, but I'm wondering if we had a true word number, I know we don't have the 100%, to see what that looks like and use that as an indicator to inform, the direction we should go as a baseline. Just throwing that out there.
In my experience, those agencies will not, it's proprietary information, so they
Right.
just don't share it. Even when remitting of taxes occurring, it's very challenging.
To address this issue of like what are the cumulative effects, from the last memo, it said that there were around 45 of these throughout the community. These have been around for well over a decade, so we're not seeing kind of a big growth in this. Trustee Robinson, you were asking about like if there are blocks that have multiple. I was looking on Airbnb because I was wondering the same thing. There are some blocks in Skokie that have multiple short-term rentals within the same building. Just a block or two from Village Hall, there's a home that has a short-term rental kind of on the main floor and also in the basement. They're kind of two separate. About a block and a half from me, there's a homeowner who has a 4-flat building, lives in one of the units, and rents out 2 of the units as short-term rentals. If we say no more than one unit, if we say no more than one on a block, we're gonna have to tell these homeowners to get rid of one of theirs. Trustee Kuhn, I really appreciate that you brought up kind of a fair process. My fear is that if we cap this at 1 per block, my fear is that that is gonna privilege the investor-run short-term rentals, not the small-scale kind of mom-and-pop short-term rentals that probably won't be the first to register under a new program. So I agree with, the intent is good. The intent is about cumulative impact, but I don't think the 1 per block requirement can be enforced or I don't think it's equitable by nature. Can I make a motion?
Yes, that's what I'm looking
Go
for.
for it. I move that we move forward with this ordinance, but we eliminate the requirement that only 1 short-term rental property can be registered on each block. But we move forward with the ordinance otherwise as is.
Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
I actually have I'm trying to balance the concern regarding the cumulative impact, but also look at not knowing where our baseline is today. I would feel more comfortable if in the initial registration that for instance, if we put a time period on it and say, if they're able to establish that they've been in business for, let's say, 2 years as an example, that there might be a way to help mitigate some of the concerns around the impact to existing STRs versus thinking about the long-term cumulative impact. So I would like to put that motion on the floor that as part of the initial registration, that for STRs that have been established for a period of 2 years or more,
be allowed exemption so that they can still continue their business.
Is there a second?
Can Michael speak to that first?
Sure.
You know, is that grandfathered in? Is that ex post facto? I mean, whatever. Michael?
We could draft towards that kind of intention. The problem is sometimes something sounds good and we can kind of codify it. The question is, how are we really going to substantiate it? Are we inviting people to find receipts and things? My real opinion is, I hate to make more work for us, but we've all been working on this as staff in-house, and I think if you let us go back and hearing the comments, give us one more shot at it, rather than trying to do something just from the dais today. We can try to find something that might work, and I know we've been looking at other municipalities. Perhaps there's an answer out there. I'm sure not as good as our answers, but at least it's worth looking at them. So I appreciate the question, Trustee. This type of thing technically can be drafted for, but I don't know that on the fly here right now we would have something that's really practical in terms of enforceability. And that's what's really important for our staff, that we don't create a situation where we're adding work, it's not really enforceable, and might actually create more frustration than we're trying to solve.
What you're looking for this evening, though, is approval of the concept.
Right, to move to draft,
Outlines.
right. Approval of the
Then-
concepts to move to drafting of an ordinance.
So in drafting the ordinance,
We could do more research.
and bear in mind the suggestion of Trustee Kuhn and Trustee Johnson. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think the other guidelines are great. I think that's the structure overall is great. Do we need to vote on it?
I think if there's a consensus,
We're fine.
Sounds good.
Okay. Did you have another, was that it? Oh, okay. I thought there were two. Okay.
I did too.
Oh, well, I'll just raise this issue. This isn't as important to me as the other one, but I will just raise it. I am kind of more concerned about, if I do have any concerns about short-term rentals, I'm less concerned about the hosted and unhosted. I'm more concerned about the investor-only units, which do not have a permanent occupant at the property and are used solely for commercial purposes. In the current proposal, there is no limit to how many investor-only units can be owned and operated and registered by individual investors. And so I do kind of just want to throw out the question of, should we cap the number of properties that can be registered for investor-only use by individual investors? Because theoretically, it hasn't happened in Skokie, but theoretically, someone could buy 5 homes for this purpose, 10 homes. There's no limit. And this isn't, individual homeowners using their own property to gain kind of an additional source of income. This is someone converting residences into purely commercial kind of uses. So I just want to throw that out as something to consider.
Yeah, I think in drafting the ordinance,
We will look.
did you had a comment?
No, you settled my thoughts, actually.
Oh, okay.
I had a few thoughts about this during listening to this discussion. It sounds like maybe, and I do want to preface this, as last month, I actually had the opportunity to stay very close to campus for my college reunion because I stayed in an Airbnb in a row house that was on a street that had like tons of row houses, and each, I don't know what it's like inside the other ones, but ours was like, there were 2 per floor, and then there were like 4 floors. And I suspect they were all Airbnb and didn't even have a closet, so it couldn't have been rented as an apartment. Like, it was clearly an investor situation. But would suggest maybe having two categories, one for the investors and one for some person who's like, oh, I'm gonna be on vacation for 2 weeks, I'll make a few extra bucks while I'm on vacation. Because that way, it seems like you don't have one investor who's locked in the permit and then the other people just can't get in to compete. And then instead of one per block, I hear what Trustee Johnson is saying, and I think that even though Trustee Klein makes a good point that there are over 1,000 Airbnb units, it still locks out entire blocks. Because, so for my block, there are 6 houses, right? So I'm competing with one of 5 other houses, but for blocks with, say, townhomes, there are dozens, right? So now you're competing with dozens of other people for one permit. That just seems like we could avoid that situation if we word the ordinance a little bit differently. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Howard Sproul, resident of Skokie. I just pulled up Airbnb and I punched in Skokie and I went out to December 25th to, see what's available, okay? There's only 29 units listed on Airbnb that are available. And, I know you mentioned, investors and, all that stuff, but it's, and I'm just gonna say it's highly unlikely that you've got, BlackRock coming in here to buy a property to Airbnb it. I mean, I have experience, I have a Airbnb, Skokie gets taxes off of it, that's fine. But as far as the problems and the issues and, whatever the crime problem is, or parties or whatever that are, that's individual. That's on one individual property, period, and of, what I see, 16 places actually. I opened it up into Evanston. There's 16 properties in question here. And I picked a date that, was likely not occupied. Just deal with these individual units, send the police out. You got police reports. We don't need new ordinances, is what I'm saying. We don't need, you guys, getting commissions and so on to, and I don't like to say waste our counselors' time here to draft things, but, there's details, ordinances, rules in place to handle, individual problems at an individual case on an individual level. That's it.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor, which is to approve of the concept and direct the Corporation Counsel's office to draft an ordinance. So, is there anybody else who wishes to address this issue? Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
Perhaps you want to say, taking into account the board's.
Yeah.
Boris Wernick, resident of Skokie, and I just wanted to show you the picture of how the water is distributed after the project you did in Maine. So after every rain, I can
Well,
pass my phone
Sir,
if you want.
sir, we're talking about, short-term rentals right now. That will be, your comments would be more appropriate later in the meeting. So, thank you. That's okay, not at all.
Mr. Sprague's comments made me think of a question. He mentioned taxes. Do we know that Airbnb is remitting the taxes to Skokie?
The ordinance is written in a way for them to pay taxes, just as a hotel would. It is not consistently being adhered to, and so this ordinance will address that as well.
Is there a way to do it directly to Airbnb?
We have had many conversations with all of the vendors.
Okay, thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sudker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson.
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen.
Aye. The understanding is that in drafting the ordinance, it will take into consideration
Comments.
the questions that were raised.
Thank you.
Item C was approved under tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report this evening.
Next item is report of our Corporation Counsel, Michael Lorge.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Good evening, everyone. Items A, B, C, D, E, and F are ordinances which were on the consent agenda tonight at the beginning of the meeting, and they were adopted at that time. Item F, item G, is an ordinance which is on the agenda tonight for first reading and will be on the June 3rd, 2024 agenda for second reading. This ordinance will create a new type of liquor license and limit the availability to two of those licenses. The Skokie Farmers Market, seasonally held from June to October, has grown in popularity over recent years. The market continues to expand the number and types of vendors each year, and the market seeks to offer a wider variety of artisanal goods and products locally produced. The Liquor Commissioner has determined that a limited number of local distilleries, vineyards, or breweries would complement the vendors who are at the farmer market. To that end, the Liquor Commissioner is recommending the creation of a Class J license, providing for package sales and to allow tasting at the Skokie Farmers Market. The tasting has strict state rules as to what a tasting is, and that's included, would be included in the ordinance. These licenses would also have to secure a booth from the farmers market, so there are two financial obligations for them. Mayor, this will come back on June 3rd unless there are any questions at this time.
Any comments, questions?
As the parent of two very willful children, do the tasting requirements involve like the person giving out the alcohol specifically demanding and very closely inspecting an ID?
Yeah, this is, as I made a quick reference to, I can be more specific. The process of a tasting is not just by ordinance, but by state code, very specific. And the entire concept here is that the area will be set aside in terms of the tasting only takes place in front of the vendor, who will have to be what we refer to as Bassett trained, which means they are trained by the state at the time they obtain their state liquor license. It's also required to obtain our license, and part of that training has to do with identifying who is of age and demonstrating it always through a up-to-date driver's license.
Okay, thank you.
Item H is on the agenda for second reading and adoption tonight. The first reading was on May 6th of 2024. This ordinance will approve and accept the dedication of a portion of 4400 Oakton Street in a B2 commercial district to the Village of Skokie for use as a public right-of-way. The 7 feet by 105 feet rectangular piece of land includes part of the Oakton Street. The dedication will be made to the Village of Skokie without financial compensation for the land, pursuant to the condition number 6 in the Village Ordinance number 2310, Z as in zebra, 4660. Mayor, I request board action on this tonight.
A motion is in order. Trustee Robinson, seconded by Trustee Sucker. Comments, questions? Being none, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes.
Mayor, that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda are 2 items of unfinished business. First one is a discussion of term limits and ranked choice voting. Trustee Klein asks for the floor.
Regarding ranked choice voting, did you punch that thing up that I gave you? This was on the internet. If you see the third item is a item about ranked choice voting. This is Trustee Johnson, not as a trustee, but as a candidate. So in my interpretation, he is politicking, he is campaigning while talking about this in this chamber, which I, as been pointed out, is not ethical. So I do not believe that this, on this subject right now, after what has happened, that Trustee Johnson should partake in any discussion on this. Wait, furthermore,
Go for it.
I'm not done. At the meeting, 2 meetings ago, Trustee Johnson passionately talked about ranked choice voting and how getting any input from any other outside people would not be in the best interest of us. At that same time, a young lady who was an attorney, who identified herself as an attorney, got up and said, "We don't need lawyers." I'm paraphrasing. And we could, and somebody else got up and said that we could get all the information we need off of the internet. Now, the other problem I have is this attorney happens to be somebody who's been identified as somebody who has a position on your election committee. Is that correct?
I don't know. You're going to have to tell me who you're talking about.
The attorney, I believe her name was, oh God, don't get old, Polk? Yeah, the one, who was your communications person on your campaign committee?
You're asking me questions about my political campaign in a meeting?
Yeah, I am.
The person you're talking about is Callie Folk.
Callie Polk, that's it. Thank you
Folk
so much.
with an F. I just want to say, to be just very clear, I am the lead organizer since January of an active voter-initiated campaign for ranked choice voting in Skokie. That being said, I did not place any of these electoral changes on any of our board agendas. I did not ever vote, or sorry, I did not, I have initiated campaigns for term limits and ranked choice voting. Mayor Van Duzen chose to initiate a board-initiated referendum for term limits. Trustee Sutker and you seconded a motion to involve ranked choice voting. I did not bring this conversation to the board. And so I will leave this conversation up to our corporation counsel, our legal advisor, because you are raising very fair questions, Trustee Klein. I think that if you think that I have a conflict of interest here, I would argue that this entire board has a conflict of interest because we are actively interfering in political campaigns. So I will leave this up to our legal advisor, and if I am told by our corporation counsel to recuse myself from this discussion, I will happily do so.
The question here is, you wanted a discussion of term limits or ranked choice voting.
All right. And you're right, Trustee Klein. It is very difficult in this conversation to separate my outside role from my inside role, which is why I never really wanted us to have this discussion here in the council chamber to begin with. Since January, there have been 2 voter-initiated referendum campaigns in Skokie for term limits and for ranked choice voting. In April, without really any prior board discussion, there was a proposal for an alternative board-initiated referendum for term limits and potentially one for ranked choice voting as well. All I'm requesting tonight is for just an open discussion of these electoral changes. It remains really unclear whether a majority of the board actually supports either of these electoral changes. As has been mentioned by Trustee Klein, I very clearly support both, but I also acknowledge that any change to the village's electoral system is a really huge deal, and I do not want to see the board proceed with any electoral initiative like this if there is not a clear majority support from the board. So I wanted to just allow us an opportunity to discuss openly. You know, earlier in the evening, we had an open discussion about short-term rentals before we proceeded with an ordinance. That's kind of the same idea here. We haven't had really an open discussion yet of these electoral changes, but we have entertained proceeding. So if we could just maybe go through each of them. Trustee Pierce Slovan and I can't speak for her, she's not here. We have both kind of publicly supported a 3-term term limit for elected officials, elected village positions. Mayor Van Duzen, you have voiced your opposition to term limits in Skokie, and I respect your views on this.
I'm not opposed to term limits.
You were quoted in the Tribune as saying that you weren't a fan of term limits.
I'm not a fan of term limits. That is correct. I did say that. I do have some questions about term limits, and I think both of these issues are worthy of debate within the community. The question before the board ultimately is, are these two proposals something that the residents of the village of Skokie should have an opportunity to vote on? Whether you support it or you don't, you can be in favor. I'm very much in favor of putting term limits on the ballot in November, as I'm in favor of putting ranked choice voting on the ballot in November, because that's when we will have the maximum vote. It'll be a presidential election. That's when we'll have the largest number of votes. Not next April, this coming November. And that is what I am in favor of doing. I think that people in the community, I sense in going out and talking to people, that there's an appetite to vote on term limits. I think there's an appetite, not as large as term limits, but an appetite to debate and learn what is ranked choice voting. There has been a lot of media coverage of this in the Tribune particularly, and I think it is worth putting on the ballot in November so the residents can make up their minds. That is my point.
On ranked choice voting?
Yes, I think both should be on the ballot.
Can I make a comment?
Of course.
If you don't mind.
That's what this is all about.
In regard to this ranked choice voting, I have been on this board for a number of years. I have never voted on an issue I haven't read the research on. I have never voted on a land use item I haven't seen, and I've never voted on a planning case I have not discussed with either a member of staff or a member of the planning commission. That is me. When it comes to ranked choice voting, I do not have enough info. I took one gentleman 2 meetings back who said you can get it off the internet. And I went on the internet and I found a lot of different ways to go. I also learned on the internet that COVID wasn't real and Taylor Swift was an alien. So I am in favor of getting more information before I can go any farther on this subject.
Well, the question isn't whether you support ranked choice voting. Is it something that is worthy of putting on the ballot so the residents can be educated on the subject? And
We all
then-
have to be educated, but putting on the ballot does not educate me.
Well,
I
it
need
stimulates-
information, and I need information from a reliable source.
I'm,
That's what I'm asking for.
Go ahead, Trustee Kuhn.
I think putting these issues on the referendum puts it back in the voters' hands. The voters have an opportunity to vote, to learn, to be informed, and understand what it is they're voting for. I am concerned that although it may have started as a part of a political campaign, that the language that it was drafted in may not be something that would be legally binding, or would work for our village, because the last time we had referenda items, the legality of it is in question. And so if we are going to put something to the people to vote for, I want to make sure that the language is at least consistent in a way that it fits our current system of government, especially given the recent changes that we have as well. So that is my interest in having these issues reviewed and put on a referendum so that the people can vote and make their own choices. And if that is the case, then it's not the place for trustees to weigh in on the pros and cons of it, to sway decision either way, but for the people to be able to make those decisions informed.
I wish I'd put it that way. Exactly. Which is A. Trustee Sucker.
So when people have been contacting me about these different referenda and saying, you know, I don't want this, I don't want that, that's the beauty of it. I say to them, that's okay.
Sure.
You can come out and vote in November when we're going to have a big turnout, and you could vote exactly the way you want to. And that's really, really important to me, that they can have their say about this electoral change. So I agree with you, Trustee Kuhn.
Trustee Robinson.
Yeah, I would just comment on the same. I don't want to let folks know my feeling. That's my vote when the time, if and when that time comes. But to allow the residents to have that opportunity, I'm totally in favor of. I would also, just listening to Trustee Klein, I would love if maybe the village or staff or someone did do a series of educational sessions. Maybe we can partner with the library or something, but it's danger it's danger in the single narrative. I'd love to have folks who are on both sides of the issue, where people can really make an informed decision about how that fits, how it works in this community, especially with the new structure that we're soon have.
Yeah, I think, in fact, the library is thinking about doing something along the lines that you're talking about.
Mayor, I think we also remind folks, and I just got to my microphone before the village manager, that the village did put a fairly balanced written piece on previous referendums, and that would be part of the intention as well. The only other thing I will add, don't read anything into it, but we have to recognize that collecting information and authoritative information on term limits right now is much easier than where we are in terms of ranked choice voting. That doesn't mean do it, not do it. It just means that's a more evolving situation, as we all know. And we'll work hard to get that kind of information.
I do want to just kind of echo something Corporation Counsel Lorch just said, just kind of in response to something you said, Trustee Kuhn. The legality of the 3 electoral reforms that passed in 2022 is not in question. They have already been implemented. They have already been put into law. So the legality of those referendums, which are now law in the village of Skokie, is not really being questioned here. But I would like to ask, because I have not heard any concerns about the legality of the ranked choice voting question that's being circulated. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you meant by that.
I'm basing it on the recent referendum items where the question around the hybrid form of government and having the districts and whether having 4 or 6 based on population size, there is a looming question out there that could be challenged. It just hasn't been challenged yet. And so I would feel more comfortable that going forward, we're not trying to shut down and say we're blocking any this issue being presented to the people. We're just saying let's make sure that the verbiage is going to be accurate if something is going to be passed, and then the people can decide for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
I would say, so as a member of the voting public, if we want to, I hear what you're saying, Trustee Kuhn, and I think that Trustee Robinson, it's a great idea to have education programs that people can go to because the single narrative is very problematic. I would say let the people lead and wait for, I mean, the first time that I heard of these petitions was here, a couple of meetings ago. So let the people decide whether they get enough signatures even to put it on the ballot. But I will also say, similar to some of the other referenda that were proposed, like the one about whether or not we should have leaf blowers on the ballot or garbage pickup number of times a week on the ballot, the political science community is very against having term limits. Like every time they're I shouldn't say every, but frequently when they're implemented, it goes badly and the intended result doesn't happen. So to have people have a binding referendum about that, I mean, look, if the voters sign it, then the voters sign it, there's nothing you can do about it. But it is not a good idea from a political science point of view.
But this is not a debate on the merits of is it good or not. It's a question, as Trustee Kuhn has said, should it be on the ballot for the residents of the village to decide? That's it.
Well,
That's it. That's not what the question is right now.
should it be on the ballot or not is not the question?
Yes.
Oh.
That's what
Wait, so my point, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
My point that I'm not making very well is that if there's a thing that would be very bad in its implementation that people just wouldn't be able to understand, I don't know that handing it to them to vote on is such a great idea, is all I'm trying to say. So if they can't get enough signatures, then it won't be on the ballot, but if they can, then so be it.
Well, the petitions are for the April election, correct? Not the November election. I think it should be the November election. That is when we will have probably at least 3 times the number of voters. In a presidential election, you always get an extraordinary percentage of voters compared to a local election. That is in every municipality, even the city of Chicago. In this last election, they only had something like, was it 22%, 23%? After millions of dollars were spent and you had an array of candidates. And my feeling is, if you put it on the ballot, it's got to be in November. So there's no question that the residents of the village turned out in large numbers and voted one way or the other. That's just what I think.
Thank you.
Did you? Sure.
Good evening. I wrote out my comment.
Could we have your name?
Yes, my name is Rebecca Williams, and I work as the statewide organizer for Fair Vote Illinois. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that is dedicated to educating and advocating for ranked choice voting across Illinois. Early this year, our group learned that citizens in Skokie were interested in running a petition drive to get ranked choice voting on the ballot, so as to allow the voters of Skokie to decide if they would like to change their local elections to using ranked choice voting. The city of Evanston voted for this change in November 2022, and our organization spearheaded that effort. When we learned that Skokie wanted to pursue ranked choice voting to help build on other recent voter reforms, we naturally offered our help. The most pressing need was referendum language. With a citizen-initiated referendum, this language needs to be detailed and all-encompassing for the change that will be required should it pass. Skokie will soon switch to a hybrid village board with some members elected at large and others elected by districts. All of this was taken into account when crafting the referendum language which we are circulating on our petition. This language was reviewed by multiple lawyers who are experts in elections and ranked choice voting. Fairvote Illinois has a vested interest in seeing more municipalities across Illinois adopt ranked choice voting. Therefore, we have made sure this referendum language suits the requirements of home rule referendums, as well as the particulars of Skokie's local government, so as to actually be implemented. When it came to our attention that the village board was considering placing the RCV referendum on the ballot, this seemed to be a positive development. A huge benefit to the board deciding to put ranked choice voting on the ballot is your ability to pass a detailed ordinance alongside the resolution. This would enable the referendum question to the voters to be simple and straightforward, as opposed to the lengthier question that is currently required with our citizen initiative. We are confident in the enthusiasm of Skokie voters to gather enough signatures to get an RCV referendum on the ballot, but we would also appreciate the board's support and recognition that this is an important issue to the voters of Skokie. I also would be delighted to have it on the November ballot as opposed to April. However, based on the agenda we saw for this evening, it is concerning that the board is speaking of using a law firm to craft entirely new language. This kind of comes across as interfering with a citizen initiative as opposed to supporting. Fairvote Illinois always aims to be a resource to local governments, and we are happy to provide a draft ordinance should the board decide it wants to move forward with placing an RCV referendum on the ballot. And I'm happy to answer any questions this evening if you have any.
Thank you. Is there anything else anybody wishes to express?
That might be.
I really appreciate the clarification from the board. Thank you.
Okay. Item A is a proposal to hire Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins to help prepare a draft referendum question for the possible adoption of ranked choice voting for consideration by the mayor and the board of trustees for the ballot for the upcoming 2024 general election, the November election, in an amount not to exceed $2,000. Is there a motion? Trustee Kuhn, seconded by Trustee Sucker. Trustee Johnson, did you have some comments?
I do, but I don't have to necessarily start if someone else wants to weigh in.
Anybody else have any comments or questions on the motion? Trustee Robinson.
Yeah, I'm just reiterating what I heard you say just now, Mayor, that this was a possible recommendation of language.
Yeah.
Nothing that's going to be placed on.
Correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, I do have comments. I just, colleagues, I want to just really start this conversation off by, if we're going to consider this path, we have to acknowledge that our board has our Skokie Village Board has a history of problematically interfering in voter initiatives. There's a Illinois Supreme Court case in the 1950s about this, ruling against the village board. So let's just start by saying I really think we need to proceed with caution. There is already a voter-initiated referendum question for ranked choice voting in Skokie. And the language of this question was written by statewide ranked choice voting experts. Earlier this year, as was mentioned in one of the last public comments, the organization Fairvote Illinois, they spent 2 months crafting a Skokie-specific referendum question in collaboration with numerous election attorneys and a member of the Illinois Ranked Choice Voting Task Force. And an initiative is already underway in the community. The proposal on our agenda tonight would majorly interfere in a voter initiative. This proposal would allow Klein, Thorpe & Jenkins, KTJ, a law firm that I know has very qualified attorneys, but is a law firm with zero history of ranked choice voting policy work. This proposal would allow them to create a second alternative referendum question from scratch. I think that this is problematic because it would disregard the existing work of ranked choice voting experts. And I think it would make our situation a lot more complicated because we'd have kind of two competing ranked choice voting questions in the community. Please keep in mind, and this was emailed to us in April, representatives from Fair Vote met with our village manager and our corporation council in April, and they offered to assist the village in crafting a board-initiated version of this referendum based on the work they have already done, and they offered to do this for free. So I really strongly disagree with the proposal that's on the table. I think we either should let the current authors of a Skokie ranked choice voting referendum take the lead on a board-initiated referendum and ordinance, or we should stay out of this. Something that was just mentioned in the public comment was the possibility of letting the existing authors of a ranked choice voting referendum draft a board version, and then we could hire KTJ to review the work and make any edits or suggestions. If we need to consult an attorney to review the work that's already been done, that's very reasonable. But to start from scratch, I think is inappropriate, and I think it would really problematically complicate our situation.
Well, you're assuming that they would be starting from scratch. They're not. And secondly, what we're talking about is putting it on the ballot for the general election. And Klein Thorpe is certainly the expert on what the new form of voting is going to be in the village of Skokie. And to ask them to take a look at this and see what they can come up with that will be consistent with the new methodology of voting, I think is a fair question. And I reiterate, it's in an amount not to exceed $2,000, and I think it's money well spent. They did an excellent job for us in crafting the ordinances for the new electoral reform in the village. I have a lot of confidence in Klein Thorpe, and certainly whatever they come up with, the entire board is going to see and can make a decision at that point.
What is on our agenda tonight is for them to draft a question. It does not say that they are going to base their question off of any existing work. It suggests that they will be essentially starting from scratch, and there is no indication in the proposal that's in our agenda tonight that says what they will be working with or how they will be navigating this. I will say, I agree it's only $2,000. They're saying they'll charge us $350 an hour. They're saying that they can do this for in less than 6 hours, whereas the statewide ranked choice voting experts spent about 2 months working on the existing ranked choice voting question. So this proposal disregards 2 months of work by experts to say that this law firm can do it in less than 6 hours from scratch. And Mayor, I do appreciate that Klein Thorpe and Jenkins did help us implement the 2022 electoral reforms, but we need to be really real tonight. KTJ has also been misused by the village. We have used them for really good purposes. We've also used them to cover up open meetings violations and
Incorrect.
defend
That
us
is not
against
true. That is
lawsuits
not-
that we shouldn't be in.
That is
So
not
Trustee
we have,
Johnson, the board has voted, so what is it that you're trying to achieve right now?
I'm trying to get this board to not involve KTJ in starting from scratch on a referendum question that already exists in Skokie. We're about to majorly interfere in a voter
There's a
campaign.
lot of opposition and judgments being held before we've seen the language that they're going to produce, and it may very well be consistent with what Fair Vote would recommend or approve, or you might even approve. But it doesn't seem like it costs much to have this in mind, that we have an independent entity that has an understanding of the recent implementation that we have to at least review the language.
It costs $0 to go with the existing experts who have already offered their help.
That's part of a political campaign right now.
Okay.
I appreciate the work that they've done on the ranked choice voting. The issue is that this is a village, this is a municipality doing this. This is not a campaign.
Got
And
that.
we have to be we have to be very careful, I'm gonna use your words,
Sure.
that we make sure that it looks and is objectively written, and that is why I believe we need a lawyer to do it. It's nothing against anybody else who's drafted it before. It's the fact that we are a municipality, and we have to do things with due diligence and objectivity, and you've been telling us this for a long time. So I think the way to go is to have it be done by lawyers.
We're,
Yes.
good.
This is the second time I'm coming up and showing this memo. This memo, I'm not sure if you can see it, is a redacted FOIA request. We have the unredacted version, but it doesn't matter what the actual substance of the memo is.
Can't see it.
Oh. This is from the legal review staff of the Office of the Senate President regarding the Village of Skokie referendum changes that were already voted on. This is from the Office of the Senate President. And this is a memorandum in response to that memorandum. Anybody who loses the next election can take any one of these sides and attack the referendum that was already passed. This was the voter-initiated referendum. If you want to do this, do it correctly. Get out in front of it. Don't allow this to become another headache.
Thank you. I did also just kind of want to speak to this, this either-or option of it being voter initiated with the petition or the board placing it on the ballot, which again, we would be in favor of as long as the language is good. But I do want to say it seems like we should differentiate between probably what that would look like between the two, because we have, Fair Vote Illinois has crafted very specific language for the petition. It is very detailed, it is robust, because that is the way that it has to be for a petition for a home rule referenda. However, if the board should decide to place it on the ballot, you would have the option, and we would firmly encourage this, to pass an ordinance with all of that detail of what adopting ranked choice voting for Skokie would mean. And that would be that would be great for the legality of it. That would make it much harder to challenge. And it would also make it so for the referendum question, it could be a very simple question saying something like, shall the Village of Skokie use ranked choice voting for the election of mayor, trustees, and village clerk? So that is what we would recommend if the board was placing it on the ballot. So it's a little bit, in my mind, the discussion of if you are going to involve outside legal counsel, if the board is, if it's for the purpose of the board placing it on the ballot, they would want to be drafting an ordinance, ideally, which, again, we would be happy to do for free. And of course, it would, you know, we're not opposed to more lawyers reviewing that. The more lawyers that look over this, the better, because we want to see this pass through well in all municipalities that adopt it. But I just kind of wanted to point that out, that it's kind of two separate things we're working with.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Finally, yes.
from your understanding of this proposal, from your understanding, are we asking KTJ to draft a lengthy, full question for ranked choice voting, or are we asking them to do what was just recommended to us, to do a shortened question with an ordinance?
I don't know which it is they would recommend that we do. I'm not aware that they're thinking of an ordinance. I think the thought, at least from what I'm able to understand, is to draft the referendum question. If we decided to do an ordinance as well, we may avail ourselves of your participation in helping us. But that's something that the board, I think, would take up. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn? Trustee Johnson?
Given that a member of this board has questioned my conduct and suggested that I have a conflict of interest, respectfully, I will abstain from this vote. And I will remind you, Trustee Klein, that on many occasions I have brought up very serious conflicts of interest involving your votes and asked you to recuse yourself, and you never have. Tonight, I will recuse myself out of respect for your concerns.
Trustee Klein?
I vote aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a matter of new business, Plan Commission Case 2024-01M. Johanna Neiden will do the honors.
All right, good evening. The village received the request from the 8160 Lincoln LLC to modify special use permit ordinance 09-8-Z-3699 through the modified review procedure. In short, the petitioner, who is here this evening, Mr. Tony Varda and Joanna Varda, to remove the driveway to access the rear parking lot. Since approval, the construction of the alley at the rear of the property provides a route to the rear parking area of 8106 Lincoln. With the removal of the driveway from Lincoln, there is new space to create a small outdoor play area and maintain the 5 parking spaces plus an additional new parking space that was not contemplated in the original special use. Staff recommends removal of the condition, for this modified review that pickup and drop-off take place on the petitioner's property. As the business has been in operation for quite some time, some parents prefer to park and bring children to the property instead of coming onto the property. So they park on Lincoln and walk the child to the business. Corporation Counsel, Plan Commission Chair, and I have reviewed this request and concur that the modification is in substantial compliance with the intent of the original special use permit and improves the conditions of the property and the public realm.
A motion on Plan Commission Case 2024-01M, a request by 8106 Lincoln LLC at 8106 Lincoln Avenue for an amendment to Special Use Permits Ordinance 09-8Z-3699 through the modified review procedure. Motion is in order. Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Klein. Are there any comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you for your patience this evening.
I'd like an item under new business before we get to public comment. This concerns my missing agenda item that's not on our agenda tonight. As you all know, for the second meeting in a row, an agenda item that I have requested has been denied from appearing on our agenda, even though I have fully complied with the agenda item process for trustees in our village code. My agenda item request concerns the majority vote section of Village Code, and it aims to correct a miscalled vote made by Mayor Van Dusen last September. And sadly, because the village board has refused to correct this mistake for over 8 months, the village board has recently been sued because this mistake contributed to further violations of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. My agenda item is not on tonight's agenda, so I want to instead make a short statement about the lawsuit that has been filed against us. Colleagues, we all make mistakes, and when we do, it is best to acknowledge these mistakes and to correct them and to prevent them from happening again. So tonight, I want to very freely acknowledge that the Skokie Village Board is at fault for all of the procedural errors and open meetings violations that are outlined in the lawsuit that has been
Trustee,
filed against us.
Trustee, be very careful.
I
You have-
understand what I'm saying.
Hold on.
I understand.
You have fiduciary responsibility because you are one of the people being sued.
My responsibility is to the residents of Skokie to follow the law, and this board has broken the law. So
Not
I am
according
acknowledging
to
our
the
mistakes.
PAC.
I urge all of you to please, speaking of fiduciary responsibility, please refrain from wasting a single public dollar to defend and cover up the board's open meetings violations any further. Instead, I am urging the board to please correct these mistakes immediately and to prevent this situation from getting any worse. This is our fiduciary responsibility. This is our moral responsibility. Thank you.
And
I
I
have
might
a
point out,
question.
just let me, 1 second, please. This issue upon which the Edgar Powell, your buddy, has brought this lawsuit was taken up by the Attorney General's office and in a lengthy report, and concludes by saying, for the reasons explained above, the Public Access Bureau has determined that your requests are unfounded. We will defend ourselves in court. And the Public Access Bureau even agrees that we have not violated in any way the Open Meetings Act, and to the contrary, that we have adhered to it strictly and judiciously. Trustee Kuhn.
Yeah, I have a question.
That is
Um,
very wildly inaccurate, the statement that was just made. The lawsuit against us is that we have violated Section 206D of OMA, which under your leadership, Mayor, we violated from 2017 until January of this year. Something that we're supposed to do every 6 months, we skipped for 6 years. So we can't just sit here and claim that these violations, that we're going to expect taxpayers to fund covering up our mistakes. It's okay that we made mistakes. We all make mistakes because we're all human, but we have to acknowledge our mistakes, we have to correct them, we have to prevent them. That is good government, that is good leadership.
But Trustee Johnson, you're also providing inaccurate and incomplete information. And I'd like to ask you, when was the last time you had any communication with Edgar Powell?
When was the last time you've acknowledged any of the village's open meetings violations? We can't prevent and correct these mistakes if the 6 of you just sit in silence and pretend like this isn't happening. How many times do we have to get investigated by the Attorney General's office? How many times do we have to get sued before this board acknowledges that we are getting terrible legal advice from Mayor Van Dusen and Corporation Counsel Lorch?
You haven't answered my question.
He still hasn't answered your question. Would you mind answering your question? You won't? Oh, so you only answer the questions that you deem are appropriate. Thank you.
What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that this board has repeatedly violated the Open Meetings Act, and the Attorney General's office agrees with me. What are you suggesting that I have done wrong? I'm the only member of this board who is trying to correct our violations, and y'all are accusing me of something. You need to just accept that we have a problem, and we can work to correct it, but we have to first acknowledge we have a problem.
Let somebody else speak. Yes. No, that's fine. It's public comments.
So, actually, to Trustee Johnson's point that there were mistakes made. 2 meetings ago, I got up here and I said something that I think was taken the wrong way. And at least in Jewish law, there is a concept of a wrong that was done in public can't be apologized about in private. So I wanted to get up here and say, and to clarify my words, that when I said that Trustee Johnson had his treasurer for his campaign was also a commissioner on one of the village commissions, my point was not that he was doing something unethical, but in fact the opposite. It was that it was completely fine for him to do that. It's completely fine for that person who is on a commission who has the same ethical considerations that other village employees have. Other village employees are also able to do the same thing that the village commissioners are able to do in a political sphere. I hope I made that more clear. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight I would like to talk to you about my philosophy of government and impacts of noise on human health, and they're related. So I think that the bare minimum purpose of government, and I think a lot of you would agree, is to prevent residents from harm, right? If most societies have laws against murder, however they define them, and they define them in wildly different ways. They have laws against theft, right? Because you can't have a society where you have to worry about people just stealing your stuff every time you leave your home. I also think that government needs to protect its citizens or residents from health impacts that they can't avoid on their own. So noise is one of those things. Our processing of noise evolved hundreds of millions of years ago, right? It's from our amygdala. And loud noises meant danger. So it triggers the fight or flight response, and you produce adrenaline, and your pupils dilate, your heart rate increases, blood pressure increases. And sudden loud noises are not a thing that we can just get used to. There's plenty of research about that. Frequent triggering of these biological responses causes long-term health damage. Exposure to more or less consistent loud noise negatively impacts learning ability. Maybe specifically reading. All of the sources I saw were specifically about reading comprehension in children. And it was whether it was at school or whether it was at home, it didn't matter. The effects were still seen. Higher exposure to road traffic noise, which is one of the things they were talking about with the kids, increases also in adults diabetes, heart attack, angina, heart failure, and stroke. Sources of loud noises in Skokie are gas-powered lawn care equipment, cars that have been altered to be especially loud, you know what I'm talking about, right? The ones that right. And fireworks, specifically at the Evanston Golf Club, and people setting them off in their backyards just like willy-nilly for 2 months every summer. So here's what I am asking you guys to do. Ban gas-powered lawn equipment, especially leaf blowers and ride-on mowers. Don't give permits to fireworks for the Evanston Golf Clubs because they disrupt children's sleep, they terrorize pets. There's no benefit to the residents. Most of the members are not residents of Skokie. And it's not the same as the display at Niles West, because here at the Evanston Golf Club, the fireworks are very low, so unless you're sitting on the grounds, you can't really see them. So you're getting all the disruption with zero benefit. Set up noise meters on the busier streets, such as Dempster, that if they get triggered from those loud cars, they take a picture of the license plate. And how do you know which car it is? Because it triggers a sequence of these things, and the only one that's in all of the pictures is the one triggering it. And then just ticket the registered owner. Are you the driver? No, but it's your car, so you get a ticket. And maybe have an exemption for trucks because they're very loud, but they're not doing it on purpose. In the case of gas-powered lawn equipment, not only are they disruptive to the people.
Lauren.
3? Okay, I'm just going to flip through the slides so that people can pause the video at home. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Sir, you had wanted to speak before.
water distribution project looks like after a small rain. And all the water goes onto the sidewalk, and that grass is not absorbing it, and that's already been destroyed by people driving over it. And this is in front of the block where all the businesses are in line.
This is on Main
And
Street,
5 feet walk.
Main Street?
Main.
Main Street.
Yes.
Where?
Yes. And, I mean, in front of the businesses, the grass doesn't make any sense at all. Because even on Dempster or Octon, you don't put the grass in front of the businesses. You put brick, concrete, asphalt, whatever. Make it look whatever beautiful you want, but don't create a scenario where people are gonna sleep, fall, get hurt. And also, on a cemetery, we're not allowing descending water for the flowers. But here we're allowing descending water right on the street.
Sir, where exactly on Main Street?
This is 4100 block. And
Thank you.
before that project was done, the water was not standing on the sidewalk. Now it does.
4100 Main on the south side of the street?
Yes, sir.
That's, there's not a lot of permeable surface there. That's, if our memory serves me, that's mostly concrete there. There's no place for the water to run off
There is
or to be absorbed.
5,
Right, and they're all concrete 100%.
and it would be as nicely absorbed through the brick fitted to the sand as it does with the grass.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, there's nowhere for it to go to be absorbed because it's all 100% concrete, if I remember.
But since people drive on a walking area continuously in multiple numbers for a period of time, that grass gets destroyed after 1 or 2, 3 vehicles passing over it. And it looks inappropriate, it acts inappropriate, and I do not know if it does much absorption, but it definitely does much of standing water.
Mhm.
It's, and being a business owner, I don't like to water slick all property long in front of my business, and I don't like my clientele stepping into the water and possibly slipping, falling, hurting themselves. This is something what obviously, when you look down from City Hall on the south side of Waltham, do you have a lot of grass there? What absorbs the water? And it's in front of the businesses, but it looks nice, and it's less possible to fall and hurt yourself, and requires quite a bit less maintenance than grass.
Okay, let's take a look at that. We're expecting a big rain tomorrow, so let us take a look.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take pictures just in case.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure,
Anybody else?
yeah. Join the parade.
Start the clock. Good evening. My name is Howard Sproul. I'm 8649 Nowsitter Road. On behalf of the overwhelming number of previously unaware residents in our village, having become aware about the proposed gas-powered leaf blower ban, I am here again to express non-consent and implore you to can the ban. Everyone agrees it is vain, destructive, and foolish. We do not consent. April 7, 1837, Hans Christian Andersen penned a wonderful tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. Written for children, adults love Andersen's tales because they find themselves challenged, transformed, when proven foolish of their vanity. In this tale, a pair of swindlers deceive a king in his court, proclaiming they weave the most glorious cloth. Only a fool or unworthy person can't see it. They squander the king's gold, silk, and fine fabrics, set up a loom with nothing on it. A grand parade is set where their vanity is exposed. An observant child declares the king is naked. The people laugh in scorn as the ministers, advisors, and king are shamed. Meanwhile, the swindlers disappear, having whisked away all the kingdom's wealth. Today, many residents are seeing this parallel as village policy is woven by swindlers, the cancer called the Skokie Environmental Sustainability Plan. This tale, it seems, describes the process of environmental policy in our village today. Our village funds swindlers, squandering our village treasury, weaving tapestries of destruction with colorful charts and graphs to codify cancerous policy drivers destroying our village. Just last session, this board tossed yet another $40,000 to a group of swindlers to weave yet another cancer we call the Business Climate Destruction Plan, designed to kill interested potential employers considering locating in Skokie. How can one feel one day when they realize they've been made a fool to believe CO2, plant food, the gas of life, is poison? How can one explain to their colleagues, their children, they went along just to get along as a drone in the false climate crisis carbon neutral parade? Surely the thoughtful and untainted have examined reference materials of Patrick Moore, William Happer, and Climate the Movie. Surely, if not deeply compromised, one sees this deadly masquerade. Again, we say, can the gas-powered leaf blower ban indeed the entire environmental sustainability plan? We do not consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You nailed it on 3 minutes precisely.
I know.
Good job. Good job.
All right, I'm going to give a public comment from the podium. If there's not another comment, I'll let her go first.
I just want to go back to what it says on the front page of the agenda, which is to be respectful of others. And I feel like I was personally attacked by the previous speaker as one of the people who drafted the environmental sustainability plan.
All right, I'll be giving a public comment.
Do I get to rebut? Nah. Okay. Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. For the 12th meeting in a row, I'm speaking about the urgent need to reform the Village of Skokie's legal department and correct the blatant misconduct in this department. Tonight, I'm going to continue a historical overview of the board's political hiring in this department, because since at least 1957, Skokie mayors and trustees have had a terrible habit of appointing their own political campaign and political party leaders to high-paying public positions in the village legal department, and then misappropriating these village attorneys for political purposes. Previously, I've spoken about the formation of Skokie's legal department and how elected officials, I would argue, subverted the village's new council manager form of government by perpetuating political hiring practices by establishing a legal department that would remain under the political control of the mayor. Tonight, I want to talk about how historically new Skokie mayors have responded to the village's highly politicized legal department. And I'm going to give a few examples. In 1961, in his very first meeting, new Mayor Myron Graysdorf fired the entire legal department in his first meeting because these village attorneys were also political operatives for his predecessor. Mayor Graysdorf immediately replaced the entire department with his own political allies. In 1965, the same thing happened again. In his very first meeting, new Mayor Al Smith fired the entire legal department. He immediately appointed his own political campaign chair to serve as the village's lead corporation counsel. And ever since, the village board has been led by mayors from Smith's political organization, and they have all continued to politicize the legal department in the same way. Mayor Van Duzen, I apologize if these comments are too critical, but in your most recent reelection campaign, you allowed and encouraged one of the village's assistant corporation counsels to chair your political campaign, and you allowed and encouraged the village's lead corporation counsel to manage your political party's selection committee for trustee candidates. And every year, you vote for the village to publicly employ your own political campaign leaders and steer roughly $400,000 of public money to them, even though this is a huge conflict of interest. Mayor and trustees, this is not the way things have to be. I ask you to never forget that the village board has the power to break this pattern once and for all. You have the power to reform and to depoliticize Skokie's legal department.
Trustee.
And I'll be asking the village board to do this at every meeting until it is done. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address the village board? If not, trustee Suckin,
I move we adjourn.
we are adjourned.